Glad everybody can make it to today's class. Today's class is going to be a fun one, and the title will bring you a little bit of an insight as to really where spirit comes from and where what your job is to do. All right. First of all, today's color is orange. The most of the things that we go through in life has to do with our childhood. Everything stems from our childhood. How we reacted with certain instances, how we react to people's negativity, how we react to bullying, how we react to money, all comes from our childhood. And so today, when we talk about the things that we know or the things that we can connect to, it's usually something that we've learned at a very early age. And sometimes it's so subtle, we don't really realize that so it all stems from our childhood. That's why today's letter and color is orange. So if you have carnelian or an orange, or even an orange, an actual fruit, the color orange, when it actually connects to us, is right away connects to our childhood underpinnings and our childhood experiences on more and more exactly. So when we get close to that orange, so anything that you'd have around the house that would be orange, all right, a piece of material, a crystal, and that of the like, or you can even think of having something that is orange in color. Okay, that will help you connect to that childhood part, because we are going to be connecting to our childhood in that way, but in a different way regarding manifesting something. All right. Whenever we were trying to manifest something, it always has something to do with history. All right. I remember a while back, I saw a documentary on farm animals, and it was on this particular farm. The animals were very, very neglected. Many of them never saw the light of day. They were always in their little 10 by 10 stalls. Some had something even smaller, but they were always inside. They never saw sunlight unless it came from a small window that was in the barn that was there. The owners just never cared. They just didn't care about animals. They just fed them, watered them, and that's pretty much it. No vet. They didn't take them for a walk. They didn't do anything. So they just didn't know how to treat animals in that way. And it went through many years of the animals living the same way. And all the animals knew is their environment. They didn't know what was outside of the barn walls, so to speak. Many of them had their hair so long and riddled with matting and everything that many of them couldn't see. Their skin was blistered, and it had infections on them. The hooves were so bad on the horses that it looked like boots. I don't know if you've ever seen hooves that are not maintained. They start to come up, and it's really painful for these horses to have the hooves that is that's not maintained. They never saw a vet in those many years, so you could just sort of paint a good picture in your mind about how neglected these animals were. Until one day, somebody came by to the farm looking for something else, and they get into this barn, and when they saw the conditions of the animals, they were so heartbroken that they ended up buying the farm. And they turned it right around. The first thing they did was they brought in a vet. They brought in groomers. They brought in people that could help them. They brought in the groomers so that sometimes the mane on the horses were so matted, and so that horses couldn't really see. So they had to shave all that down, and they conditioned the skin. They fixed up the hooves. They fixed up all the things they could. They brought in a vet, and they just started maintaining and being more humane to these beautiful animals. They didn't know any better. Now, just realize that these animals were inside the whole time, that from birth to where they were now. And then one day they figured, okay, they're ready. They're not going to hurt themselves. They're healthy enough now to go out and just sort of run around. So they opened up their doors, and they opened up the main barn door. And to their surprise, none of the animals really moved because they didn't really know what it's like beyond the confines of their stall. So they almost had to be coaxed to say, "Come on, guys, let's go, let's go." They just had to get coaxed to get out and just go outside. And they were very timid. Their heads were down on most of them, on the cows, the sheep, the horses. Like all the animals were just so down. They didn't know what was going on. They thought they were going to be. You could only imagine if after all this time, when the unknown comes, they don't know where they're going, and so there's a lot of uncertainty. But anyway, they reluctantly they started coming out of their little cells, and they started to walk towards the opening. And it was the first time they said, "Oh, this barn is so big." I said, you could see it in their energy. You just see it, that they were starting to get excited. Their heads were coming up and they were looking at each other. And when they start to get to the edge of the barn door, they're double doors, and they started looking outside, they've never seen grass before. They never saw a tree before. They never saw, and when they came out, they were all just, well, what is this? And they started walking on the grass, and it took a few minutes before they realized that this is what freedom is. This is what freedom's all about. And they never knew what freedom was. Some of them started waving their head, and some of the cows started running. Other animals saw this, and then they started running, realizing that I never ran before. Because you can only imagine a 10 by 10. You can only gallop so much before you have to stop because you have a limited space. And they had unlimited space. It was over 200 acres of wooded area and pasture and stream, and it's beautiful. They looked up at the sky. They've never seen the sky before, and they just kept staring. And there's this bewilderment in it. And as I'm watching this, I'm just wondering what it would be like to never see the sun, never see all these amazing things that are expansive. And he started running, and the horses just started galloping, and they were just, you could just see how happy they were. Their tails were wagging, their heads were up, and they looked back to make sure it's okay, sort of thing. And it was quite a sight to see these happy animals. Freedom. This is what freedom is all about. And after seeing that documentary, I started to think about what would it be like if humans had the same treatment, and we had, by the way, but from birth, from very time you were little, you were put in a room and you never saw the sun, you never saw what a tree is, you never saw what grass is, and they fed you under the door. They didn't give any medical attention to you. You just went through many, many years of this room, and that is the life that you could see. What would go through your mind? What kind of things would come through your mind in that way? Then they open the door with you when you're maybe 8 or 9, and you would have no idea how to run or how to react to the pasture, the trees, the water. You wouldn't know, like, what would go through your mind having this kind of freedom that's always been there. You were just not in a position to experience it. It was outside of the walls. And then I'm thinking, what about thinking? What would a person be thinking about when it was? Well, history shows us, and it's very clear, and it's documented in many history books, that when humans are in captivity for a long time, then they start thinking about what it's like, and they get depressed because they feel that there's no way out, and it's the mind that says you're never going to get out of here. And they had many articles on this just with the concentration camps over history. They've had many of them. And when humans were very, very poorly treated, what their psychological, mental, and emotional conditions are going through, and why the mind just starts to go wild. because animals don't do that. Animals live in the moment. Animals live for right now. I'm not feeling the greatest right now, but I'm alive, and they're happy to a point, whatever happy means to them. They're happy just to get fed. They're happy that they get water. They don't even understand that the grooming and the other things are a big deal until they get one. But a human is different. A human has the ability to think, has the ability to visualize, and they look back. And when they look back, they have regret, guilt, anger, vengeance, and a whole host of other things that, again, animals don't have. So that got me to thinking, what is it about humans that gives us this ability to be able to think like this? Because right away, we always go for the most negative thing that is pertinent at the time. I mean, think about it. If we just look at a very simple example, like maybe one of your kids said they were going to be home at 10 o'clock, and now it's 10:15. What are you thinking as a parent? Maybe the car didn't start. Maybe they had an accident. Maybe they're in a ditch. Maybe they're bleeding somewhere. You know, as you could tell, the mind just starts to go into this rogue, wild fantasy. And then they come in at 10:20 and they're fine. They just stopped off for gas, or they did something, and they're home, they're safe. So I like to look at those kind of examples because it shows me that although your kids are fine, there was a certain moment that you were almost in terror. You were almost, and it was a vision. It was a vision. So where does that vision come from? I'm always asking questions like that to Spirit. Spirit had a very cool answer. When humans came into existence, they came in with a gift. We are not like the other animals. And I suppose this is where the misconception is that humans have a higher civilization or have a higher archy or whatever. And it isn't about that. When humans came in, this particular special breed on this earth, they were given a gift. And that gift was the ability to look forward and see all the amazing things that you can do or you can want in your life. Maybe a better living conditions. I mean, at the very beginning of time, it was very simple. All they wanted to do was the gathering and the hunting was the big thing. We want to make sure that we can gather enough food for the tribe. So they're visioning that, yes, I think we can do this. There's going to be lots of food, and it manifests. So you could think about all these great things that you can feed your family from the very beginning. And what would that feel like if once you got that food? It would feel great. That it would be that pride and all the great feelings it was when something that you envisioned happens. However, you not only have the ability to see forward and manifest that, we also have the ability to look backwards at our past. And when we look forward, we have to imagine how something would feel, because now we have to bring in, how would it feel when I get this thing that I want, when I can feed my family? How would that feel? I would feel great. It would be quite a nice sense of pride. So we're bringing that in, and we're trying to feel it based on the future. But in the past, you don't have to imagine it, do you? You were there. You experienced it. And it is a raw emotion. It's emotion that you actually felt. And Spirit says one of the things that humans do oftentimes is they take the pain of the past and they project it forward. Because the pain of the past is very, very real. Some people will say, well, if I'm just imagining something in the future, it can't really happen. It doesn't feel real. So they look at the successes perhaps from the past, but when you get your mind going rogue, we call it, or when you get your mind that is going wild, and it just goes, and what happens if this happens or that happens, and you just let it. And I'll give you an example of this. Let's say, for instance, a person is living in a very toxic relationship. There's two kids, and every day there's always something that goes on. Some people might relate to this. They might know a friend that's going through this or had been going through this. But I want to give you an example of how we work our minds, and so we actually talk ourselves out of an action that is good for us. So a toxic relationship goes on, and the person comes home, this toxic person, and just hits the kids, hits you for absolutely no reason because you might have done something perhaps that day that wasn't that good. They take full control, and there's always something wrong. And so everyone's living in fear. Okay, don't get this person angry. And they're very sort of footed that way. And it gets to a point where after a while, it's just getting too much. And they're figuring, well, what would be my options? Well, my options would be to leave. That's the usual options that we could figure out. But then what happens is the mind kicks in. Well, if we leave, what if this person comes after us and starts stalking us? Well, if that happens, what would happen if this person does a legal suit against us and is constantly tormenting the kids, constantly tormenting me, follows us, and we go on and on about all the terrible things that could happen. Remember, none of this is true in right now for you, but your mind is making it so real that it is actually happening, and your whole body is going through the experience as if it is happening. You start to sweat, you start to get fearful, you start to get hesitant, right? And so what Spirit says is that when we just let our minds go rogue and just keep going and going, the next thing that happens is that with all these things that could happen, how are we going to be able to do this? How are we going to pay the rent? How are we going to just get out of this situation so it's safe? Who and how are we going to be able to get a hold of people so that we could start a new life? And when there's no answer, and there's usually no answers when you talk about the how, and I'll explain in a minute why there's no answer, we go back to where we were and we do nothing. That's how people stay in toxic relationships, because they let their minds go and they ask the how question. How is this going to happen? When we think about manifesting, we just look at something very delicate, like let's say it's a summer cottage. We want a summer cottage. You have a house now, let's say you want to relax and just sort of kick off a little bit and have some place to go away from the city, so you're at the cottage, right? The cottage life. When you envision what it's like to be on the deck and you could hear the water splashing up against your dock, and you feel the sun, it's the middle of winter, middle of the day, middle of summer, I should say, middle of the day, you got your shorts on, and you feel the sun on your body. And you can hear the loons, you can hear fish maybe jumping out of the water, you can smell the water, right? You get bring in all those emotions, and then you just stop there. Spirit says that's the best, because you're just experiencing what it's like when you get there, as if you already own it. And what happens? Your skin starts to get hot because you're under the sun in your vision, and you start to get excited. But what would happen if you just let your mind go rogue a little bit? What would happen if you just let yourself do that? Oh, a summer cottage. Well, that would mean that's another payment. I don't know if we could afford that mortgage. Well, what would happen if I get so busy at work, I don't have time to go to the cottage, and it would just sit there? Well, what if there's all this work to do? If I get a fixer-upper, I won't have time to fix it and relax. And you see how the mind can keep going and going. Next thing you know, you're asking the how question. How would we be able to do this? And when there's no answer, and again, I'll tell you why there's no answer, then you back off and you say, maybe I'll just stay where I am. And that's why people feel, they're not actually stuck, but they feel stuck, right? This is how people feel stuck, because you let your mind go in a negative instance, and then you ask how am I going to do this? When you don't get an answer, you feel you have to have all the answers laid out, everything's going, and now that's not the way life works. I don't know anybody that has ever, even if you're a planner, there's always going to be a portion of the plan that you have not figured out, that you don't know what's going to happen. And in that lack of knowing what happens, your mind fills it in with fantasy. Something that hasn't happened yet and probably never will happen, but it feels real enough to make you stop and hesitate and maybe not even go forward in the first place. Okay? So that's the gift that we have. We have the gift of envisioning something ahead, but it's the danger of looking backwards that is the thing. Let me give you an example of how this could work in another example. If I had a beautiful, sharp chef's knife, we could set up and I could prepare a meal that would be amazing. I could cut the meat a certain way. I could cut the vegetables, and with that one knife, I could create an incredible meal. When people would sit down, they would say, "This is so delicious." So there's joy, there's a taste experience. I could create love, and there's dancing. I mean, there's many things that you can do with that knife, because now you're creating a meal that nurtures people. Or I could use that knife to hurt myself or to hurt someone else. Same tool, but it's used in a different way. And that is what Spirit is saying is as similar when we look ahead about something that we want that would excite us, or look backwards at something that we don't feel really crazy about. When we look back, we talked about this in one class, that when you look back, you need to relabel your past. There's a few things that maybe is in there that has a negative connotation. And we talked about how to change that a little bit. In this one, we want to show you by looking back, it doesn't help. Because you're looking at a free, raw emotion that you had back there that maybe wasn't the strongest, and you're tossing it forward because you feel that's real. So it is right now, it is the stuff that you know. So that's how the patterns of thought work. One of the things that also spirits want you to know is that Spirit isn't putting down education. In fact, they're going the opposite way. From the time you're born, right through your whole life, even if you live to be 96 years old, you should be training, reading, educating yourself, self-enhancements, taking workshops all the time. There are some people at 80, they're going through another career change. In other words, they're constantly evolving, constantly learning, and wanting to know things. But here's the thing. The term is also correct when they talk about if the more that you know, in time, you'll realize there's a lot more that you don't know. When you start educating yourself at a very high level, and we're talking PhD level scientists that been in their industry for 40 years plus, and when we ask them, what do we know about the universe? What do we know about our world? What do we know about anything? They're saying, actually, I've had 40 years experience. I'm still learning. And I'm realizing that there's still so much that I don't know, even about our own planet. They have marine biologists that still don't know what's on the bottom of the ocean. That's so far down. And there's still so many mysteries about how this planet works, let alone the universe. The universe is way more expansive. They're just trying to figure out how water can be reprogrammed just by having it in your hand and telling water that I love you. And it changes the cellular component of water. Why does it do that? We don't know. So in other words, there are going to be a point where there are some things that you will not know. So today we're going to give you a really cool technique of how to quiet down the mind, because those of you that are looking forward at goals this year, this is a great time in January when we're looking forward in the beginning of a year, and we're looking at the different ways and techniques of how we could manifest something. So by the end of the year, we have some way to get there. That could be a business. You could be alone perhaps for many years, and now you're ready to have maybe a companion in your life, and you want to manifest that. You might have a business that you want to expand, or maybe a house that you want to move into, or a body that you want to have more fit. When we simply look at it as, I want to be a certain weight, but yet you're condemning the weight that you're at, you will never move. Because again, your mind is convincing your body that I don't like what you are right now. And so the energy sort of goes down, and anything you do to it, you'll even gain weight by drinking water. That's why, because your body's just tightening up. So when you honor your body the way it is, or you honor whatever you have right now and grateful for what you have, and just envision where you'd like to be and stop there, not to go on. I mean, we could use the example that, yes, I would like to be very fit. We have, I had a client that used to be 225, and he says at that weight, he felt amazing at that weight, because now he's about 280, 285, something like that. And he says, I'm starting to feel a little sluggish. But when I was at 225, how did you feel? So we went through an exercise of how he felt and give me examples of how he was able to go up the stairs and not even sort of cough or have to stop halfway through to take a few breaths to do the rest of the stairs. How he was able to feel so good in his body that he could just jump up off the couch and just go for a quick run or jump on his bike or something. How did that feel? That freedom. Oh, he says, it was amazing. And so we worked a lot about that. But what do you know about your body? I asked him, what do you know about your body? He says, well, I do know. I says, that's the problem, because you don't know anything about your body. It doesn't matter how long you've had this body. There's always an unknown factor that will make it so that it'll get you to this other point. Now, I'm going to show you a technique here of how we can totally stop this, what they call monkey brain thinking, when your mind wants you to just go wild, thinking that, well, if I get fit and get to 225 with this example, does that mean I have to get up at like 5 a.m., run? And then that means that I'm going to be late for a meeting. I don't know if that's going to be able, because when I get back, I have to drive the kids to school. And then what am I going to do? And you come up with your mind, not you, your mind comes up with all of these rogue fantasy feelings because it's not important enough for you. So your mind keeps going. Your responsibility is to stop that way of thinking. The second part of it is, of course, the how, and that is constantly and have always been connected to the universe. The how is never, ever your responsibility. The how is what happens as you're going through it, the how will come up. I mean, we have a few people just in this audience that are going through things, and there's a lot of things uncertain in their life. And they're always asking the how. And as soon as they stop asking the how, all of a sudden somebody calls up and then they want to help and something happens. And it's always at a point where we just give up. We just let it go. And that's what Spirit wants you to do. So we're going to give you a quick technique about how this happens. So in this meditation that we're going to do, I want you to think about a something that you want for this year. Now, you could have it so that it actually combines a few goals all in one. I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, you want to find somebody, have a partner or have a companion this year. You want to be able to meet somebody because you've been alone for, let's say, a long time, and now you're ready to share your life with somebody, let's say. And at the same time, you want your business to also increase and do well, and part of your business would be to expand. And maybe also your goal is to move into a small house. Maybe you're in an apartment right now, or you're living with somebody and you want a nice house. Well, what would be the stretch of having meet somebody? Your business starts to expand as you're starting to meet that person. Both of you start working, and now you could afford this home. Can you see how that can happen? It's not a stretch, right? But then you stop there. And this is what you say to stop the monkey brain and then also stop the how, is you just say to yourself, I know nothing. Because the moment you say, I know, and how many people have kids when you say, you know, you're not supposed to be just coming in with your dirty boots all over the carpet. I know. You know, you're not supposed to be drinking, let's say a large drink at 9 o'clock at night because you're going to be up half the night peeing, or and I know, you know what I mean? It's that I know, and as soon as you hear I know, it's like all of a sudden the listening stops. The any additional information or any additional insight stops. As soon as I hear an I know from a client, I know that they're not listening, and I know they're not retaining what it is, because they know. How do you teach a person if they already know it? However, when you say, like, and I've been through many experiences myself. In my 64 years on this earth, I've gone through many hardships and challenges, and there's a lot of things I have experienced. And I still, to this date, I says, there's a lot of things that I don't know as well. And this particular documentary about the farm animals, about what they know, they don't know anything. And yet they're so happy, and they're experiencing that new life, and they're happy to keep going with it from that day forward. They don't look back. And humans have that tendency because we have this gift of looking forward. Animals don't. So along with this gift, we should also realize that we need to honor that gift by using it properly. When you envision things, only look forward. And when you want something, you just say, what I would like, here's a rough idea how you could structure this. I would love to meet somebody that I could love, and then that they could love me. We could have a nice experience together. I'd also love my business to start to take off. I have some ideas that I'm open for, and that would be great to double, triple, or quadruple my business this year. It would also be nice if we could move into a home, because from there, I don't know anything. I don't know nothing. I know nothing. And what that does, it stops the mind, because when you know something, the mind uses that raw materials to start going wild. Think about it. If you know about the cottage, let's go back to the cottage example. If you know about the cottage, and you know about all the ways, the mortgages and everything else, you know about that, then you could say, I want this cottage, but I also know that, we need a mortgage, and there has to be a cash flow and all that stuff. So, but if you say, I know nothing, then your mind doesn't do that. There's no raw materials in which your mind could go any further, because you're saying that I know nothing. Also, it also manifests the how. If I know nothing, then I'm not part of the how either. That is the universe's work, right? So in this meditation, I want you to think about something that you want by the end of this year. If it's a longer goal, that's fine. But if you could make it for this calendar year, that would be great. And also keep in mind that if you think it might take a couple of years or 3 years, I've had so many cases where when they start thinking about it and really engrossing themselves, those 3 years turn into 8 months. I've seen it. So don't judge how long something will take based on what you know, because we don't know anything. We don't know how the miracles can happen that could change things, and it only has to change for you once. You only need one cottage, you only need one good body, you only need one good person in your life, right? So people may say that it may not happen, but they will never bet that it won't happen because they don't know. Nobody will bet against you. Nobody will say, I'll give you $10,000 if you cannot do this goal. Well, how many people would do that goal? That's why they don't bet on it. But they'll give you little snippets of negativity just to sort of trip you up. But when you say, I know nothing, and you say, I want this goal, I know nothing, and now experience that from exactly where it is, and only think about all the positive feelings of what it would be like once you get it, once it's yours. In fact, pretend it's already yours and you're feeling that elation and that emotion right now. And just say, I know nothing. And that just stops everything. Okay, let's try that for this meditation. Select a goal that you want for this year and let's try it right now. All right. If your goal is to get a house, your goal is to expand your business, to sign up for all kinds of courses that are expensive, don't look at that. Just say, I want to do this, and that's just the way it is. Let the universe do the rest, and just say, I know nothing. Now, this particular music meditation that I did, on purpose, I did it so that the tuning forks in some places are quite loud. Okay, so I know some of you are on phones and computers, so that's great. I have a podcast version which is softer because usually people, when they listen to podcasts, they have earplugs. Okay, so I'm calling it, so it's a different version, but this one is based on the fact that you have a computer, and so when you'll hear the tuning forks, at times it'll seem like it's jolting, and that's done on purpose because it constantly jolts the mind to back off. I don't want you to think anymore. No thinking. The more you think, the worse that things will get. Just experience what it's like to do this and just keep telling yourself. And as soon as you start to go into some negativity, just say, I know nothing. And that brings you back to that very good place. Fair? Okay. I want you to get comfortable. Sit in a chair that's comfortable for you. If it has arms, that's great. If you want to lie down, as long as you could hear the message, you don't have to see the video, but as long as you could hear it, okay? You could turn up your phone if you like, and we'll go through this. So this is about 20 minutes. So get yourself comfortable. I want you to breathe in the color orange. Big, deep breath of orange. Pretend you're in an orange orchard, or and for some reason, I'm seeing somebody loves orange roses. That's beautiful. I used to work at a flower shop. That's a great thing. So breathe in those petals. Breathe in that orange color, and then exhale orange. And you might see little bits of black or gray coming out of there, or it might even be a different color. Either way, okay. Let's just go with it. So breathe in orange and breathe out orange, and see what happens with that. And we'll see you in about 20 minutes. Okay, here we go. Enjoy. Okay. Slowly come out of the state that you're in. Just take your time. All right. Well, that's great, guys. Thank you so much. I hope this was of value. And if anybody wants to do a one-on-one, if you want to go through this through an acceleration, let me know. Next week we're going to be talking about something else. I still have no idea what it is. So we'll see what Spirit wants to relay by next week. So have yourself a great weekend, and love you all. Okay, take care, guys.
Thanks, Tony. We love you.
Okay, bye
Thank you,
bye.
Tony.
All right, bye now. Bye.